Welcome to the All Outdoors Photography Podcast. This podcast is about all things outdoor photography, including landscapes, wildlife, macro, and more. The show features two talented photographers, Henry Doyle and Ryan Taylor, who bring their different experiences in photography to the podcast. The show is released weekly every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. In today's episode, Henry and Ryan talk about the differences of color photography and black and white photography. Each style brings something special to the photographer's images, and this is the episode where we break down each into detail.
Welcome back to episode 50 of the All Outdoors Photography Podcast, and today we have a very colorful and sometimes not colorful episode.
Yes, we were talking about black and white and color photography. We're going to be not really so much. I guess it is like a little bit of like a versus, comparing and contrasting. But we're just going to be discussing the different aspects and maybe things we like about each of those styles of photography, and maybe even some drawbacks of each one too.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode, and thank you all for sticking with us. It's episode 50. We've done a lot of these. Thank you all for listening.
Yep, and we plan on doing many more, as far as I can tell. So as long as we want to go, which I feel like will be a long time. So yeah, we really appreciate your support.
Yeah, and I do want to mention once again that we do have a Patreon link down below if you'd like to get access to a little bit further content with the podcast, like a exclusive Discord, portfolio critiques, cards, all kinds of things. So check that out if you're interested. And yeah, do you have any updates, Ryan?
Not too many. I mean, I guess the festival season, as it is, I'm done with outdoor ones, or have been for like over a month now. But I'm doing a few indoor ones. They're like more or less like holiday, kind of crafty, artsy shows. So I've been doing those. Finally uploading as we speak my Hocking Hills videos on the YouTube. I've basically been getting caught up the past week or so. I'm finally posting new videos, new blog posts, stuff that's as old as like August. I'm finally getting around to like making or putting together. So it's kind of silly to be, editing these videos of me saying I'm like sweating to death out in the, heat and whatever, and it's like November right now. But I mean, I'm all this content over the past, what's been recorded over the past couple of months, and just pretty much doing more of that. So now I'm finally getting caught up. I'll probably definitely be going out and shooting finally here in the next coming weeks, even though fall foliage has kind of peaked. At least it is right now. So I might be a little late to the party, but I'm looking forward to it because in winter I usually take a break from all the other aspects and focus mainly on shooting, which means like just snow and all that fun stuff and frost a lot more of. So just more of that stuff. But other than that, it's been it's pretty much the same stuff for me. So how about you?
Yeah, so I did a lot of shooting this weekend. It is kind of starting to get colder, and kind of there's a lot more waterfowl present. So this weekend I just focused on that. So I did probably 10 hours of shooting this weekend. I just went to one location 2 mornings in a row, and I just shot a ton of ducks. I mean, so many, like, nothing too incredibly rare, but still it was incredibly fun just to work on that, and like nice morning light with like frost and like some nice steam coming off of the lake. It was just really cool. So I got a bunch of images to edit. I haven't started on them yet, but you should be seeing those soon, and I'm going to be working on that a lot more, because this I'm just trying to get way more into kind of this waterfowl shooting. I've recently discovered that I hadn't really done it before consistently. It's really fun, so I'm going to be experimenting a lot more with that.
Awesome, man. Honestly, I would say probably my favorite like type of bird species to shoot is waterfowl and ducks, and like any of those kind of like water birds, because they're a lot larger and easier to like shoot. Just find in winter like they're just such a like breath of fresh air. You visit your fishing ponds, your lakes, kind of like other bodies of water, and they're just in numbers, especially like more specialty kind of species like I don't know if you get like golden eyes or
Hmm.
ruddy ducks, American black ducks. I could just keep going on and on. Loons, I guess. The
Yeah.
bigger lakes, especially. Grebes are fun. I love those birds.
Hmm.
Yeah, just any of those. But yeah, they're just a lot more fun to shoot, I'd say. And I don't want to say easier, but they are bigger, so it's easier to like spot them, of course.
Yep.
Keep track of your sightings.
They are
But
very skittish
yeah, I
though.
just find in
So.
winter yes,
Hmm.
the more I find that the more special or uncommon the bird is, the more skittish most of the time, which is unfortunate. Same with like wood ducks, which are one of my favorite. They're very beautiful
Oh yeah.
looking drakes, but yeah, it's one of those things that but it makes it fun though because it
Hmm.
means you like you said, get out early and you see this beautiful conditions as the light and the fog lifts and everything over the water, and you get down, laying down flat. I'm assuming is what you do, and you get those like eye level shots, which are the best kind, anyways. So yeah, they're very fun to play with and
Oh yeah.
photograph, I guess, for that
Hmm.
reason.
Yeah, and my probably
But yeah,
my top three from this weekend. I did shoot a black duck, which was pretty cool. And then I don't know if you've heard of a shoveler duck, but they're basically like a mallard, but like a female mallard, but they've got a like inverted beak. It was super cool. It's literally like a shovel. So I got some great shots of that.
is it? Are
Would you
you
say?
referring to the northern shoveler?
Yes, the northern shoveler. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've seen those a handful of times, not too much,
Hmm.
and I've never been like close enough to see one beyond like scoping it out, but never enough to get an image.
Yeah, they're pretty
Cool,
cool.
very different looking. They have
Uh
like
huh.
you said, they have that uniquely but kind of weird like shovel shaped like a trowel kind of like bill. It's very strange, but I mean it definitely is a feature that you could easily pick apart and say like, oh,
Hmm.
that's not your typical mallard or whatever. Like
Yep.
they are very different for that reason.
Uh huh. And then also for the final one, I don't know if you know what a Muscovy duck is, but it's apparently a domesticated
Yeah,
duck.
actually, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a domesticated duck, but it must have escaped from a farm or something, because it was in this like nature preserve pond, and it was super weird. It was a beautiful. It was a male and a female, and I could get really close to them. Like I got an eye shot of the duck, like just its eye. So that was super cool. Play around with that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned those two species in particular, the shoveler and the Muscovy, because I actually had my first for my life list for birds. I had those both sightings at the same place, same day, and I could definitely attest to the fact that they're much more habituated. I'll say because like
Hmm.
Muscovy ducks, I remember it was quite pouring rain. It was cold, rainy day, but like I was car side or whatever, just in my seat, and I like moved out my telephoto lens with the window rolled down. I got these like real up close shots of the Muscovy duck, like headshots even. So it's pretty funny you're saying that too, because yeah, it's not just me that
Hmm.
noticed that. But yeah, the shoveler is much more, I would say, tricky to take an image of close up like that at least.
Yeah, the shoveler wasn't quite a close up. It was like a not a small in frame, but like a medium shot. But I'm still really happy with it. So.
There you go. I mean, yeah, any image you can get of like a cool species like that's it's worthwhile, of course, too.
Oh yeah. All right, so let's get into the colorful topic here.
You're gonna keep making those color puns, aren't you?
Uh huh.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's something for me. Black and white and color. I've always told people it's like a editing struggle. Like yes, like because I'm always debating whether it's like, do I like this image in black and white or color? And like, I
Hmm.
go back and forth. And of course, as we'll break it down here, like different subject matter or different lighting or anything, or how you edit the image makes the world of a difference. But like, for you, Henry, like, do you have a preference? Would you say for color black and white, or is it more specific for you?
So I would say definitely color. Um, Over the past like year, I've really just almost exclusively shot color. Um, I I just feel like it suits the way I shoot better and the subjects I shoot. Um, I used to be kind of the midday shooter, like the lazy shooter, and I would do the black and white just to compensate for the like the harsh lighting. But nowadays I kind of go out in the lighting I want to shoot in, and for that lighting I just find that color works better for that.
Yeah. It's interesting how you notice you picked up on that like shift in, I guess your perspective in a way where you're like, yeah, I used to be the midday light shooter, like a lot of people, and I could certainly attest to that too, in my experience. But yeah, it's neat how you notice the, I guess almost like the different application of it, and like you prefer the color and the other,
Hmm.
maybe like the other times of the day too. So good on you for picking up on that.
Hmm. Now I will say for portraits, I do like a decent amount of portrait work, outdoor portraits and stuff for various clients, and I'll generally send them a black and white and color of the same photo, and they really like the black and whites. So I think for human subjects and kind of more natural, like if I'm walking around the city, like on a trip or something, just kind of walking around and getting some shots of buildings. I'll pretty frequently put that in black and white because I just feel like it's a more casual thing for me, and I like it. Kind of differentiates it from my other work.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point because yeah, especially with like out in nature, like a lot of things, not all year, but like a lot of majority of the year, we'll say, like there's lots of these beautiful, vibrant, colorful things, and like not that people aren't vibrant and colorful, but it's like maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
maybe just find like to your eye, like it's more attuned that people portraits or something needs to be more black and white. So why do you think that is? Maybe.
Um, I feel like just the way I see nature. I mean, one of the main draws for me loving nature is the colors that everything has, and I think that almost the color sometimes is even more important than the subject. With the light, how it interacts with the subject, and how how everything comes together. But I feel like with like buildings and people, the details are more important. So like in buildings, it's like the lines of the building and like the windows, and then with humans, of course, it's like the their skin, the wrinkles, all that stuff. You look for in a portrait. So it's just I feel like it kind of lends itself better for those subjects.
Yeah, that's really good points. Yeah, you kind of look, you seek out color in nature, but then, yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
Well, thank you,
You
thank
left me
you.
speechless with with your meaning there.
Uh huh.
But it like makes sense. Yeah, it definitely does. Where it's like, yeah, you seek out the details in like a
Hmm.
person almost, and like yeah, or non-nature
Hmm.
subjects, I guess. But
And
yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, and I really, even though like I really enjoy shooting color for nature, I struggle a lot with it still to this day. I think probably the number one thing, like if I export an image and if I go back and re-edit it, I'd say the number one thing or reason that I go back and re-edit it is a color issue. Probably 90% of the time, like either I have the white balance wrong or I've oversaturated some colors because I want to have like a consistent portfolio. I don't want to have one really saturated image and then the rest are kind of uh, a lighter color palette. I want to make sure everything's consistent and I want to make sure the white balance is like realistic for the image.
Yeah, definitely. I've been noticing in recent months, like with my post processing workflow overall, is I'm looking more for like the white balance and trying to make I'm being
Mm-hmm.
like hyper cognizant of it, with exporting each image because I think I'm noticing more and more, especially with my oldest edits, is like some of the like the temperature and the like you said white balance and everything, it's like thrown out of whack, and it like I'm like there's no way it was that warm looking like the middle of winter, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Um, and so I've been noticing it's like there's almost I don't want to say a trend, but it's like I've been noticing where like I'll edit like a set of waterfall images, like 8 images, and like there's two of them that are very warmed up. Like you can just clearly tell in the water, and just the surrounding area and everything. And it's like bugging me a lot because then I just need to make sure everything's more consistent because
Mm-hmm.
it throws it all off balance. Especially with our last episode about portfolios and consistency. It's like it definitely stands out, but not for the right reasons usually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and once you flip that switch in your mind of like caring about white balance. It never goes away. Sometimes I wish it did, because I don't know if you feel like this, but sometimes I feel like I mess up my images more when I adjust the white balance, and I can't get back to that original. Like, oh, that raw file looks so good, but now what have I done? It's a struggle.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's something now that I'm like paying more attention to it. It does bug me. It like honestly drives me insane a lot more, like you said. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I don't know. I feel like I'm like it's good intention because I'm trying to like okay, I'm gonna really pay attention to the temperature of the image and the tints and everything. And I feel like I'm having more control over it, right? Because it is a
Uh-huh.
raw file and I'm editing it, of course. But like, yeah, then I do something that's not really like wrong, but like I'm looking back on it after exporting, and I'm like, why did I make it like that? Like, just why? Is
Uh-huh.
like my monitor not calibrated right, or is my eyes not seeing it quite, the way I want it to? So,
Hmm.
and then you print them and it looks different or something, and it's just
Oh
like,
yeah.
I just I'm this big old mess too.
Hmm. So, what about you? So, how often do you shoot black and white versus color?
Uh, well, I'd say color is like 90% of what I shoot. At least I'll say like intentionally. Like as in I'm pointing the camera at a scene, I'm going like this deserves to be color. But there is a good portion of it where like I do like in the field I'll say like I'm pointing the camera at some scene or some whatever, and I go like this is gonna look a lot better in black and white. So it's not very often, but it does happen.
Hmm.
But for me, it's like when I'm producing the photos, like a lot of times, and it depends on the subject matter, which we can talk about here in a moment. But like, I feel like certain subject matters or certain lighting lend themselves better to, black and white versus color or whatever. And so yeah, I mean, I edit lots. A lot of times, I'll just edit like a copy of each one, and just kind of settle it up later. Or I'll ask other people or my followers, people about like, hey, which one do you prefer more of? At least in this specific instance or whatever. Um, so preference, I mean, like I guess I could say color, especially when it comes to printing my work. Like I very very rarely print black and white work. And some photographers only shoot in black and white, so kind of like go figure. But yeah, I guess I would say color if I had to choose one. But yeah, that's just I know some photographers that they shoot exclusively black and white, and it's like their body of work looks a lot more consistent, and they find a way to make it work for them, I guess, in a way
Hmm.
too.
Yeah, but I think with those all black and white photographers, you are missing out on a big element of reality. I mean, it's good on them. It's an artistic choice, but you're missing out on some of that beauty. Um, but yeah, so with that 10% of black and white shooting, you said you did. Like, what kind of subjects do you do black and white with?
Basically anything midday light.
Mm.
Um, and the reason why is because if it's like a sunny, when I say midday, I'll say sunny midday light. Like, just perfect blue sky day, or, there's puffy cumulus clouds and the sun's, high noon or around that time and it's in full force, whatever time of year. But like the reason I say that is because it's higher contrast, it's going to be much harsher light and shadow. Everything's just kind of overall the whole scene or whatever you're looking at in front of you is a lot brighter. And the reason why I say that is because, yeah, it's just higher contrast, and it means when you translate to black and white, it's going to have much more striking detail in the light and shadow that way. Like I've tried, converting black and white images from like overcast days, and it's just like everything looks so flat, so just kind of bland and gray almost. And you can always up the contrast, of course, in post production with a slider. But like if you do it a little too much, it begins to look a little fake. So you
Mm-hmm.
definitely need that more you need that specific lighting, at least in my opinion, to make it look genuine and like almost like authentic, or else it does come across as like overcooked. So I would say anything midday, like that goes for landscapes, waterfalls, birds, like woodland scenes, stuff like that. I would say. But in contrast, like intentional camera movement stuff, I never want to see those in black and white. I don't think I ever want to see. It defeats purpose for me with those, because I want to be so colorful.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll photograph those midday the most because once again the color and brightness is so vibrant. So by contrast, at least. So No pun intended there.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And you definitely, like you said, you definitely can overdo it with the contrast. And you really want to look for that natural contrast, so you don't have to, adjust the sliders too much and just get a good black and white file in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. I like the usage of that. Yeah, natural contrast. That's definitely the
Mm-hmm.
right way to say it. Is like just how pure, I guess, the scene in front of you and in front of
Mm-hmm.
the camera is. So, yeah, I definitely agree there.
Yeah, because like I mean, we've all seen like two contrasty images. Like even in black and white, there will be some kind of a temperature change when you add like computer contrast. That's just how it works. Like, you can see it more in color images, but it still applies to black and white. It will apply a slight color change to those shadow areas. So getting natural contrast is definitely the better way to go.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something I find myself. I found actually now I'm thinking about it, this is I think worth raising a point about is that I just realized this. So when I'm editing colored images, I find myself holding back a lot from saturation and like
Hmm.
just overdoing the color, right? But like for some reason in black and white, I find myself going crazy with it and like upping the contrast, the sharpness, the detail slider, which is kind of like contrast in a way. I just realized that the vignette especially, I usually do those pretty
Hmm.
harshly in black and white, but for some reason in color, I'm much more reserved in my editing. I just realized that. I really did. So yeah, it's a
Interesting.
point worth raising, I think. Yeah. So I
I
don't know
mean,
if you feel the
why
same
do
or
you
do
think?
something similar.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely feel the same way. I think it's because I think it's so much easier to make it look fake when you pop those things or pump those things up on a color image. Just because we were out
Hmm.
there in a color world, we were out there shooting, we saw the scene, we know what it looks like, and at least I feel like disingenuous when I make it that unnatural. Like I used to like change colors completely, like way back in the day, on flowers and stuff. But now I've kind of distanced myself from that, and I try to do it natural as possible. Of course, I still, it is a raw file, so it's not as colorful as like maybe an iPhone photo or something. So I will, I'll bring out what's already there, but I try to just keep it fairly natural. And with black and white, you can get away with a lot more, and still have it look natural.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's just yeah something I noticed all of a sudden now. It's just and like you said, like I said, you really hit the nail on the head there with how it's something about the black and white removes itself a little bit more, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say it's not reality, but it definitely when you strip away the color and everything of that sort, like it definitely becomes a different kind of image, and because most of us, I mean, I guess some certain colorblind people might see colors more faded, right? But like most of us see the full spectrum of color and everything. And like when you remove all that, you like what you're really left with is like the light and shadow, the form, maybe like the
Mm-hmm.
texture and the detail of the image. But like I mean, color shapes a lot of what we see in the
Yeah.
photography we take. So
Mm-hmm.
when you remove that, it's like what's left. It's almost become like a minimalist color palette because there's only like really three colors mainly: black, white, and gray. So like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I just never really thought about that before until now. Like the way I edit the images is like the way I approach both styles is very drastic, and I think, like you said, you explained it pretty well. So maybe that's the reason why, at least. But anyways,
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting to think about that because I'd never really thought about that either. But I think it is, at least for me, kind of the since I was out there, I kind of want to represent it like I saw it. So
yeah, definitely, yeah. I guess I'll ask is like, is there any subjects for you that like you may shoot in black and white only, or exclusively, or even vice versa? Like, is there certain kinds of preferences in that way with subject matter?
so yeah, like I said, with black and white exclusively, like urban stuff, and then portraits aren't exclusive, but kind of half and half there. Also, I just had this thought about black and white. I've never tried this before, but I think I'm going to. Like birds with white skies or blue skies. generally they can be seen as undesirable images, but I'm wondering if like a black and white conversion with that could like save an otherwise pretty good image. So that's definitely an idea with black and white. And even like woodland images where you have to include the sky, perhaps a black and white conversion could help that. Make that composition um, more more normal again without having to make that ugly sky be too prevalent.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, I wouldn't really necessarily say, or I wouldn't encourage people to save their images, so to speak. Like, if an image is not good, like,
Mm-hmm.
I almost most of the time won't bother with it. But I will. You raised another good point. It's like, if, like, let's say there's a sky in the woodland that is totally blown out, highlights and everything, and like you simply can't recover it, at least in post production, on underneath color, because there's chromatic aberration and all that other stuff. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, yeah, you can convert it to black and white, and the sky becomes pure white, or like a
Mm-hmm.
dull, or like a slate gray, and like it in a way does save the image, or at least it takes a new life, so to speak. But yeah, that's a great point. I've even done, like you said, with the bird thing. I think what you said, if I'm getting it right, is that you said like it's a white sky behind it, but then you convert it to black and white, and it becomes like a white
Mm-hmm.
backdrop almost, and then the bird in question is like a silhouette. Is that correct?
Well, I was just thinking, just like say there's a bird above you, like on a branch, and it's just kind of an ugly sky behind him. I was just thinking, the bird would be normally lit. Um, well, I guess it depends where
Hmm.
the sun is, but or even a cloudy day, with the bird and the sky behind him, you'd have a normally lit bird with a nice clean background. I think that would work better in black and white in that scenario.
Oh, okay, okay. I don't know. In my head, I was thinking like spot metering, and like you meter for like the surrounding area, so like
Mm.
it basically incredibly underexposes the bird in question, and it's like makes much more like striking imaging, higher contrast scene, we'll say.
Yeah,
But
that
that
that could
sounds
be
great
cool
too,
too.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a technique I've done a time or two, and it's definitely, it creates this like really, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like it's literally, like we've been saying black and white a million times, of course, but like it's literally like the background,
Hmm.
black silhouetted bird completely, and like the perch, if it's on like a tree branch, and like it's just striking. Like it looks unreal. It looks like almost like not a photograph in a way. But it's fun to try out, even if you don't. I guess even if it's like a mistake, like, oh, the bird,
Hmm.
I couldn't expose it, well enough, and it's incredibly underexposed or something. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, both are great examples for it.
So it's interesting you bring up silhouettes. Have you ever had the situation where you shoot like a silhouette image? Doesn't have to be a bird or like any subject, where you end up making a black and white without even converting it to black and white.
Oh yeah, where like the lighting's so dull, like it
Mm-hmm.
basically becomes black and white.
Yeah. So that's pretty
Yeah,
interesting. I
yeah,
encounter that every once in a while.
it's because I've done them where like I will convert it like the true W. I keep saying black and white. I'm getting sick of it. It's a B and W. But like it's like compared to the color one, it's like it's still different enough. It's subtle, but like it's still different enough where like there's a little like shades of like maybe some browns or something in there, and then like you convert it, it's a different image. I don't know how to describe it. It's just very very interesting. But yeah, I mean that's a good point too, where it's like certain techniques. I mean, it's just trying out. A lot of this is all preference, of course. It's all purely subjective, but like I do feel like certain things do, like they just look better, in one way or another. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique thing that happens every once in a while.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So what are some of the subjects you like shooting, in both color and black and white?
Well, I guess for both, I will say waterfalls. I found like the majority of waterfalls, especially if they have a really nice, heavy flow to them, like the brighter they are, I guess. But the more silky smooth it looks in a long exposure. I like it in both styles, and I would say the majority of my waterfall shots are edited with both those in mind, or even when taken out in the field, I do have those in mind. especially if you can elongate it with like a neutral density filter, and then a polarizer, of course. But I find it like certain ones will look better, honestly, in black and white, or at least equal compared to their colored counterparts. Especially when you get to like towards the winter waterfalls, where like the foliage is pretty much entirely lacking, and it's just a bunch of brown, like dirt and soil or just whatever surrounding it. And there's bare trees, and it's kind of like it's a little more bland, we'll say. I find those look a lot better in black and white, just because it does add more emphasis on the texture and form of the falls itself, instead of like the surrounding foliage, which if it was a summer or spring would be pumping out the greens, or in the fall it'd be the yellows, reds, oranges, and so on. So stuff like that, waterfalls, certain bird shots. I'm thinking in my head now to a couple of springs ago. I was doing some at a local like community park. There's always every like May some Canada geese goslings, like the little babies basically, and you can basically go for a couple of weeks and just see them like get raised, and that they're feeding, they're swimming around, kind of staying close to each other. And I've gone there a couple of springs now, just taking images of them. And I remember the first time I like properly did this. I found that the images, because there's such high noise, which I feel like is another aspect we could talk about,
Mm-hmm.
they just looked a lot better in black and white. And there was a much, it was I think there's like a pitter patter of rain, if I recall, like on and off, in this evening I was there, and it's just, really, really cloudy, dark kind of day overall, like very, very low light situation. But there I was, just laying out flat on the ground in the middle of this community park. It's wet, but I don't care. I'm getting these amazing shots, at least I think, of these birds and stuff, at their eye level, and just the interaction between the parent and the baby and everything, and the child, the gosling, and we'll say. But like the higher ISO and the higher noise from it, I just felt like it like worked better in black and white, and it made it much more. I keep wanting to go back to minimalist as the word for black and white, but like the images like felt more like simple, I guess, and like but simple but effective, we'll say. Um, and so this is like one instance where I feel like a wildlife shot felt more impactful, because of changing it to that color scheme or whatever, or lack thereof. But stuff like that. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Certain flowers, especially like flowers with white, petals or heads. Like I feel like they look a lot better in black and white. Not
Mm-hmm.
always, but like depends on what the background color is, of course, too. But like trilliums, like is just all white, especially since a lot of trilliums are like ephemeral flowers. So they'll be cropping up in March and April when there's no greenery surrounding, like on the forest floor. So it's just lots of brown and colors. So like those look really cool in black and white. Um, Stuff like that. Snow, even snow is a really great contender. Can already, in a lot of instances, can look black and white. At least appear that way. But truly converting it to it, I feel like just really adds a whole new dimension. It really puts the emphasis on the bright whites. So long as you don't overexpose it, of course, too. But I think that's it for black and white, as far as I can tell. Just rattling off a few off the top of my head. And then color, like I said, abstracts. Certain kinds of birds, like especially those brightly colored warbler species, look a lot better in color.
Mm-hmm.
In contrast, I'll say lots of flowers look a lot better in black and white. Um, Basically,
Yeah.
most of the year, I'd say in winters a lot of the times when I do black and white,
Have
just
you
because the lack of colors are already there. What's
mm-hmm.
that?
Have you ever done an abstract, like a intentional camera movement, in black and white?
No, but I mean, now that this episode's raising the point and you asked me, I think I have to try it,
Uh-huh.
or just
Yeah,
take an
like
old image and
mm-hmm.
just mess with it, especially one with lots of white in it. I'll say. So
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely sparked that idea for me, and I'll edit an image and put it in the slideshow. There you go.
Uh-huh. With
Done.
like, with like pure just lines and texture. It could be interesting.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. I've done ones in like some really moody looking light where like we can talk a little bit about color here in a moment, but like I'm thinking of one scene. I think it was about a year ago. Yeah, it was in spring once again, and it was like just this the blue hour basically after sunset, and I was in some woodland, and I just got these like they look really haunting intentional camera movement photos where it's just like blue, and there's like it's not really black, but it's not really brown. It's like a very dark kind of earthy color, of these tree trunks and everything. They're mostly bare, and it's just like this really deep, like almost navy blue color, and it's like very moody and everything. Um, but it's not really like it's colorful, but it's not really like a like people think like warm colors. It's very much a subdued, like I don't want to say calm, but it's definitely just mellow, I guess to say the least.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've never done the black and white thing with abstracts, at least those kinds. Um, so it's definitely something I'll have to try out
Hmm.
here and see how they look. So it might look even cooler for all I know, without the color.
It was black and white noises. I mean, I personally find that the black and white noise is worse than the color.
Hmm.
So um,
What do you think that is? I mean,
I feel like with black and white noise, you're really just, especially with those kind of more consistent one color background, you can just kind of see the standout noise. Like it kind of sticks out. Maybe not on the subject itself, but kind of on the area around it.
I think it's the reason why a lot of black and white photos, like, I'm not saying I'm right, but like, I feel like a lot of people do the high noisy kind of images with black and white because like it just adds this certain kind of grit to it almost.
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of people say grit, like when they talk about noise and like digital noise or whatever. Like it just adds a certain grittiness and like I don't know how else to describe it. Like just that certain like edge to the image almost, as opposed to like a softer image, which is, you know, by contrast, more dreamy, we'll say, more ethereal. Yeah, I don't know, stuff like that, kind of like the opposite in a way. So the geese one was just like an example where I was like, this looks better in black and white, and it has noise, which probably is the reason why I like it more. But like, it could definitely go both ways, and I've taken shots where I'm like, yeah, I mean, color, but it's noisy, but like it works for what it's worth. Um, so I mean, it goes. I guess it depends on the application of the results. That's really what I think is the most important part of all of this too.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Hmm. Do you find there's like certain colors that you like are more drawn to photographing? Like no matter what, like just are you much more about finding the blues, the reds, anything in between? Is there like any colors that you just find like you're really set on or that you're drawn to more?
I would say I really like kind of the uh, warmer tones with like oranges, yellows, reds. You don't actually find red a lot in nature besides fall, but if you kind of if you shoot enough sunsets, you'll get some with red eventually. So I always like to shoot that on the rarity that shows up. Yellows are great too. You get that with early morning light. You can get birds with yellow on them, warblers, and you can get all kinds of things with yellow. I think it's probably my favorite color, out of all of them. It kind of stands out from everything. Green too, of course. Green's great. You can't overdo it. It can be very easy to make that green too saturated. Like I think out of all the colors with like oversaturating it, I think that's the easiest to, in my opinion, just because there's so much green and it can kind of overpower the image. But when used properly, I really like incorporating green as well.
I think it's easy for the green part to just tack onto what you said is like it's so prevalent for most of the year, like over 6 months of green, like leaves and grass and just kind of like everything around us, and lots of plants are green, and just yeah, lots of stuff is. So like I do agree. It's like I feel like it's for a lot of people, and I'm once again, of course, guilty of it lots of times. But like pumping out the saturated greens and stuff, like especially in post production, is just it's easy to get carried away with it. So yeah, I'd agree there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So what about you? What are some of the colors you look for?
Honestly, the greens too. Once again, but I mean, I look for anything that just interest. Even if it's like not like if it's an overcast day, but it's like a much subdued kind of lighting situation. Like I'll look for something that's like not like readily apparent or obvious. Like I don't know, like just like soft pastoral colors or milky colors, like just the lighter tones of things. So if it's like a very, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example. Just like something that's, not always so obvious. But I do like the brighter colors, of course, like, the reds of a scarlet tanager or summer tanager, the yellows of like most warblers we get in birds, stuff like that, basically. But even like in winter, when it's like, even if there's like no snow on the ground, like even the brown, like old decayed leaves on the ground, or like an old decaying, dormant, we'll say, of a prairie or meadow, like there's still some beauty in that, I would say too. So you can't go wrong with it either. But I would say when it comes to post processing, like a lot of the images are a lot more warmer in color and temperature. This is something I'm more, I would say, drawn to, but it's a very slight warmth. It's not like I'm just editing, overpowering each image just for the sake of it. Because once again, I feel like each image does lend itself to a different style or whatever, with when it comes to color, at least.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's some great colors to look out for there.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like it's worth noting though is like different colors become different. I guess invoke different emotions or different moods out of each person, the viewers, and like blues are a lot more, tend to be regarded as like calmer, kind of like sometimes somber, maybe even relaxed, depending on how you use them. Like if you underexpose a blue, it might look more moody, stuff like that. So it's much more mellow, kind of like tones you get in your images. Of course,
Uh,
it goes without saying, warmer colors by contrast are much more like intense, lively, even like attention grabbing. The obvious things like that's why a stop sign's red, it gets your attention, or red light or whatever, stuff like
mm,
that. And I would even go, it's much more, I guess, philosophical, but like it's almost like more passionate. Like when they say like that's why like the heart or love, it's like red. It's meant to be passionate, stuff like
mm,
that. So like in a way, it's like red is just such this like wow kind of factor color, or even just warmer colors in general. Like they just invoke this very much more lively kind of just awe, I guess, sense of awe with your
mm.
images, which is of course great and something to look out for when you're out in the field, of course, too.
Yeah, and that goes back to ancient times. People have always been attracted to certain colors, and nowadays that's kind of spiraled into color theory principles. So you can kind of apply those things to your photos and kind of look at the best ways to attract people and to like convey certain moods. I know for me, there's some times where I will purposely make an image, just a little bit cooler. It's still keeping it natural, but just a little bit more. If it's kind of a more low key image, but if it's kind of more like a more of a passionate image with action or something, I'll make it just a bit warmer, just to kind of you know just kind of change that mood a bit and work on that color theory.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely, especially with digital post processing, it's like it's now easier more than ever to change all of these things that we've been mentioning, like temperature, the tint, even the white balance if you shoot raw, of course. And you can really make the image digitally, we'll say, is like, you can make a lot more to the style maybe you want. So you can definitely, kind of steer the direction of like certain images to be much more cool, or just anything you want, really. Because the tools are just, they're out there and they're very powerful, and you can do whatever you want with them, which is pretty crazy. And I saw this. I'm not sure if you saw it, but little tangent here. Nick Page posted on Instagram this like video, like a joke video, and he was saying about how like he's like, look at me as I replace the sky. Let me show you this cool technique in Photoshop, and like he literally just took the temperature slider and maxed it out to like bright, like the highest warmth, we'll say, and it was like, look at this cool sunset, and I didn't even have to be there, and like it was meant to be like funny, but like tongue in cheek a little bit, about how people can
Mm-hmm.
be lazy with their photo editing, but like it does raise a good point where it's like these tools and these softwares are just like so powerful. You can actually you can almost like mimic the style of like take an image that was very cool and like very not warm at all really, and then just bump up the temperature and make it look like it was like a sunset was there, even if it wasn't. So it's just fascinating to me that these we
Hmm.
have these tools at our fingertips now.
Yep.
We're quite spoiled by them.
I will say though that nothing beats the classic, being out there and getting the light conditions, exactly how you want them. You may be able to make it look close, but you can never get quite there. And I honestly, I'm sure someday there will be a tool that you can build the light you want and put it into your image. I mean, heck, it's probably already out there. But I think the original way is the best, honestly, in this case.
Yeah, definitely. And I just find like it's not really not bragging rights, but it is like I feel like it's more impressive to like if I'm at like a gallery or something, like I'll tell people like this is the color I got in camera. This is actually what I saw. I maybe like minimally like up the saturation or whatever in post production, but like this is the color that was actually there, straight from the raw file. And like yeah, I'm looking back at like probably my favorite sunset of all time I witnessed with the camera, a couple years back. It was just like this brightest orange, like almost like a red, just like all over the sky, and it was really intense. And I'm really glad I got it on camera because like I've never seen a sunset quite that like just orange and like just warm and vibrant, right over this like lake I was at. So I feel like it's just it's one of those things that you can mimic it, but like it's best to get it in camera or just how the scene actually was, while you're out in the field there too.
For sure. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
anything else
definitely.
about? Yeah. So, anything else about color?
Not really. I mean, the only other thing is just mentioning. It's worth mentioning that like monochrome gets thrown around quite a bit, and like I think a lot of people associate it with black and white, but like monochrome, I guess by definition is like just like a singular color or like a color scheme. So like monochrome images can be like if it's like the image is predominantly like fall foliage is a good example, like orange and yellow. Like that's I would consider like a monochrome image there. So it doesn't necessarily have to be black and white. But that's a cool
Mm-hmm.
like almost like a challenge you can maybe do or technique, next time you're out in the field or whatever, is to just like try to photograph images that only extract a certain color scheme from them. Like maybe put on like a telephoto lens or macro lens and try and shoot images that are only predominantly one color and see if that really kind of like helps shake up your portfolio or just gets creative juices flowing or something like that. So something to maybe look out for next time you're out with the camera.
Yeah. So, I definitely challenge you guys to try different things, color and black and white. An idea that I've been thinking about getting into recently is infrared photography. So you're basically limiting most of the spectrum of light with like a little filter, or you could do a filter on your computer as well. It kind of gives you a really high contrast black and white image. It's really interesting and something that I'm definitely thinking about looking into. It actually like inverts the sky and will make it black and then make like the details white. So like the shadows will be white, the highlights will be black. Um, it's kind of a very interesting look. So also another thing with that too, another type of like black and white is sepia. So it's not pure black and white. There's kind of a tan tone to it. So if you look at historical images, they're not always like pure black and white. They're usually the sepia tone. So if you really want to shoot kind of like a vintage vibe to things, consider doing sepia as well.
Something I don't really think about too often, is sepia and everything. Actually, recently there was a photography exhibit, at one of my like gallery communities, and like all the images were shot with like this gold kind of like it's almost like foil like look to them. I think they're digital too, I believe, but like it had the almost it wasn't sepia quite or sepia quite much, but it was like a goldish color scheme. It was really neat though, and like all the images are printed and framed in like kind of rustic old style golden frames. It was really neat. It was a really neat color scheme, but like it was like a nice unified theme there. But it really brought out these different like it made me look at images in a different way. I will say like it was just a different way of approaching kind of like photography. was just seeing these images because it's like they're all like these old timey looking like compositions and historical buildings and everything. So like it just added this weird kind of dimension. But like that just shows you the driving point of like how color and everything can like really affect your compositions. It can affect how people view your work or how they even feel about the work, really too.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point there. Yeah, yeah. There's tons of different things to try. Colors quite literally a spectrum. So there's all kinds of ranges you can go with. You could do one color, all the colors, no colors. So just try all those and yeah, be colorful.
See, be colorful, be you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I think that's all we have to add there, right?
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening.
Awesome. Yep. As always, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the All Outdoors Photography Podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and the video version on YouTube as well. You can subscribe down below, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.